belong to Glasgow, dear old Glasgow town. But what's the matter with Glasgow for? It's going round and round. I'm only a common old working chap, as anyone can see. But when I get a couple of drinks on a Saturday, Glasgow belongs to me.
Most other games, the fans will cheer if something happens on the park, a good move, a good shot. But in Old Firm games, they're in half an hour before the kick-off, it's full, and the songs start. It's as if they want to get things off their chest, and it's like a fight, it's like the Alamo.
And I remember one day at Ibrox and the ball coming out, well, the ball went out for a throw and I meant to take a throw in. Next thing there was a whiz by in my ear. And I was wondering what it was at first, because it was a lovely day, I can always remember it, and I thought it was a wasp or something when I went like that. But the thing landed in front of me in a big hole in the ground. I've picked it up. There's a golf ball with nails in it.
Glasgow is home to Britain's most famous sporting dynasties, Rangers and Celtic. Footballing giants, they've dominated the Scottish game for a century and have become a force to be reckoned with throughout Europe, both with a committed following that knows no equal.
Glasgow had the 3 biggest football grounds in the world in this city. Hampden Park, Celtic Park and Ibrox were the 3 biggest places you could go on this planet to watch a game of football.
The club's power across Glasgow breeds unquestioning passion for the game, but it also brings with it an unparalleled rivalry throughout the city. For Celtic and Rangers fans, Glasgow holds their greatest love, but also their oldest enemy. It is a rivalry that divides the city, not just on match days, but all year round.
There definitely is Celtic areas and there's Rangers areas, there's pubs you'd get into and there's pubs you wouldn't get into, and that's both as supporters and as players, you know. There's definitely that divide. And people, that's an acceptance, there's an acceptance there of that. You say, oh, that's a Rangers pub up there. And there's certain pubs you'll get into, there's a Celtic end and there's a Rangers end.
Down here, you look at it and you think, oh, it can't be that bad. But up there it is, it's life or death to some of people.
Anywhere in Glasgow you go, there'll not be long in finding out exactly who you support and what school you went in, just be maybe your name. It's a unique thing when you find that you're going out on a Saturday night to somewhere you don't really know, and it's a procedure of learning, you know, just to make sure that you're safe, then you can get home okay.
Unlike in any other football-mad city, support for Glasgow's 2 rivals is not a matter of personal choice or passing fashion, but of deep-rooted religious and tribal loyalty. For Rangers is the club of traditional Scottish Protestantism, while Celtic support is rooted in the Irish Catholic community of the west of Scotland.
It is all about bigotry. I mean, if you are a Roman Catholic, then the only team to follow is Celtic, and of course, if you're a Protestant, it is Rangers.
You go to Ibrox, as soon as you walk in the door, it's up to our knees in Fenian blood. It's no surrender. It's no Pope of Rome. It's all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, even if you were the most enlightened person in the world, and you said, I'll give it a chance, I don't want to get involved in this stereotyped sectarianism, I'll go to Ibrox and I'll see what happens. Do you think you'd be made welcome?
Go to their matches and all you get is the stuff, these people going on about 17th century Dutch history, a potato famine in Ireland from 2 centuries ago. I mean, what are they on about?
Yeah, I'm not going to apologise because I'm a Scottish Protestant or a loyalist and I identify with the Rangers football team. I'm not going to apologise for that. I'm quite proud of being Scottish and Protestant. So what's the problem? I'm not creating a problem.
It is the only derby in the world which is based on a genuine division in society. It's not just it's about 2 football clubs in a city which is passionate about its football. It's about 2 different communities inside that city supporting their own sides.
In this game, the Celtics played the Rangers. The Rangers won. What did not go into the records, but should have, was how many injuries there were before, during, and after the game. Scots, as everyone knows, do not talk much. That makes it difficult for a loyal fan of one team to persuade a loyal fan of an opposing team that he is wrong. So, with verbal persuasion denied, they bash each other in the mouth.
From earliest days, the Celtic and Rangers clashes were famous throughout the world. Celtic had been formed in 1888 to raise funds for Glasgow's impoverished immigrant Catholic community. In response, the indigenous Scottish Protestant population adopted Rangers as their own. The political problems between the Irish and the British were now perfectly drawn up in Glasgow behind sporting banners, and from the outset the clashes between the two became a holy war, producing a catalogue of violence. As early as 1898, the game was abandoned when 40 policemen were surprised by a 50,000-strong crowd. 7 years later, the police were ready, but the referee wasn't, and after Rangers won 2-0, he was chased off the pitch by Celtic fans carrying iron spikes. It took a player to die on the pitch to diffuse some of the tension between the two teams.
Here are the teams, Glasgow Rangers and Dark Shirts, playing on their own ground. John Thompson, Scottish international goalkeeper, is among the Celtic team who play in striped shirts.
I remember it. It finished up nothing each, and when John Thompson got injured before the half-time, they were all shouting and booing and everything like that. The Rangers supporters, you know. And Davy Meikle-John, the Rangers captain, came out and told him to be quiet. It was serious. See? Told him to be quiet. And in the second half, then the teams tried a leg, just played away because he knew it was serious. He never regained consciousness.
The fixture continued undaunted, and it bred off its reputation. Even the suspension of league football during the Second World War didn't put off a succession of riots when the teams met in friendlies.
Your casualty at your Royal Infirmaries and your places in Glasgow at that initial time, it got to the stage where these people hated when the Rangers and Celtic game came around because they knew what it was going to entail. It just wasn't going to be the 90 minutes with regards to who's the better team in the day or who's won the game. It was going to be all-out war.
Yet by the late 50s, Rangers and Celtic were becoming as famous for their footballing power as their sectarian antics. While both clubs looked no further than the Glasgow tenements for their talent, they were becoming major forces in the new European trophies.
The reason why this rivalry is important and does sustain is because a small country has produced two remarkably good, big football clubs. Out of everything which has separated them, they've managed to become clubs who over the years have done an awful lot better than clubs from a city on the northern edge of Europe should do.
It was the 1960s that took the Old Firm rivalry onto another plane and saw Glasgow challenging Milan and Madrid as the European city of football. But this period would also witness an unparalleled period of dominance by one club that neither side would ever be able to forget. 1967 saw a mass exodus south. Both Celtic and Rangers had reached a European Cup final. Rangers were in the European Cup Winners' Cup. Celtic were going to Lisbon as the first British side to reach the European Champions' Cup final.
The astonishing thing was I'm not really sure that half of them even knew where Portugal was. And they just set off, they just headed south. And they just went there. So by the time that we got to Estoril, where the hotel we're staying in was, they had already taken over. And they had captivated the locals.
Celtic's trip to Portugal was the first indication of things to come in the Old Firm rivalry. Though Celtic's victory over Inter Milan made them the first British club to win the European Cup, more importantly to some, it made them undisputed champions of Glasgow.
To think that 11 guys from in and around Glasgow could bring the European Cup up London Road, one of the poorest places in Europe, It's one of the great romances and fairy stories in world football.
We got a tremendous reception. I think we'll come back to Glasgow. I honestly do feel that the bulk of the city was unified in that time, and the reception that we got, I think, was not just from Celtic supporters, it was from the Rangers support as well. So why would I support a foreign team, it's a foreign team playing in Scotland? No, as soon as they're playing in Europe, I want to see them beaten right away, and likewise they want to see the Rangers beaten.
To rub salt in Rangers' wounds, they lost their 1967 European Cup Winners' Cup final to Franz Beckenbauer's Bayern Munich. And back in Glasgow, things were to go from bad to worse as Celtic continued an all-conquering league championship run.
It's a goal for Celtic, yes! Rogan. Mother. It's a goal!
There is no way a Rangers or a Celtic can put up with the other half dominating for any real period of time, because it makes life a misery.
Billy McNeil will be up for this. There's McNeil to goal.
Celtic won every league championship from 1966 to the end of the decade and into the 70s, until they had notched up an unprecedented 9 titles in a row. More than the historic European Cup victory in '67, this was the symbolic record which set the teams apart. Deep down, the fans knew that none of Rangers' achievements compared to this.
It must have been a torturous time to have been a Rangers player or indeed a Rangers supporter. But the interesting thing was the bulk of that team would have been Celtic supporters. And, you know, for us, we were the lucky ones. Not only did we support the club, we were actually played with them, played with the club, and we became the heroes.
Vital one for Celtic. And he's got it.
Other than the blue side of Glasgow, there were very few tears being shed for the demise of the Ibrox club. As civil rights marches began in Northern Ireland, staunchly Protestant Rangers were unmoved. Discrimination was rife, and it was affecting the quality of the team. Since the First World War, Rangers had never signed a Catholic player.
Rangers were pursuing a sectarian employment policy. You did not play for Rangers unless you were a Protestant. That was a fact. And it was not a very sensible policy, because Jock Steen, who was old and wise, he used to say, let's say there were 2 players and they're absolutely the same. One's a Catholic, one's a Protestant. He said, I will sign the Protestant for Celtic, because I know that Rangers can't sign the Catholic for themselves, so I win 2-0.
We had a better choice, because we could sign Catholics or Protestants. Even coloured. We didn't mind, you know, once they could play. I signed Kenny Dalglish. But Kenny actually, they were Rangers supporters. Signed Danny McGrain. I always said Danny's family had leaning swords there. I went out to the house and I saw the pictures there, you know.
In the case of Danny McGrain, Rangers' policy of not signing Catholics had led them down the wrong path, and they'd missed out not only on a Protestant, but a future Celtic and Scotland captain.
When I was a schoolboy, I'd be playing a game of football. A Rangers scout came to see me, looked at the game, saw me playing reasonably well, looked at the team sheet or asked somebody, who's that number 6 or number 4, however I might have been playing. So that's Danny McGrain, plays for the school team. But I must have been playing for a youth team or something at this time. And so, he must be a Catholic then. So the Ranger, I'm told, the Ranger scout said, well, he's not on their list.
There were several players that were coming on the market and Rangers wouldn't go for them. And at that time I felt, well, if we are going to be the best team, then surely to goodness we've got to sign the best players no matter what they are. But talking to a lot of the players didn't want it either. I mean, they wanted an all-Protestant team.
The press knew it like we were, you know, we were all Rangers boys or Scottish boys, you know. They all knew the scenario.
Sectarianism in Glasgow wasn't confined to football, but the Old Firm rivalry became the most common vent for the strong beliefs of the two sides of the city, as it was the only place on mainland Britain that perfectly mirrored the increasing troubles in 1970s Northern Ireland. As Republican and Loyalist feelings became more inflamed in Ulster, violence also became a part of football. When the two came together in Glasgow, the Old Firm rivalry would descend to its lowest level.
You actually want the game today?
No, definitely not.
What is so definite about it?
The violence before and after the game.
See, that stopped going about 4 years ago. You don't even get peace to go and stand and watch a game nowadays, especially that game.
When you don't get peace, what do you mean by that?
That's the obscenities, and you're liable to get hit with something at any time.
One 18-year-old supporter was on the Ibrox terracing on August the 30th when fighting broke out. He was knocked to the ground, and as he tried to rise, another fan struck at his head with a meat cleaver.
Glasgow people, whether you were a Catholic, probably think nothing of steaming into one another. There was slashings, there was bottles, there was a fight, there was a doings, there were kickings. Not only ice cream vans being turned over. Why was the ice cream van turned over? Because the guy was an Italian. Well, if he was an Italian, 9 times out of 10 he was a Catholic.
Excuse me, what's this sort of stuff you're selling here? Why Ulster rather than Rangers? What's Ulster got to do with football?
As the latest chapter of trouble in Ulster broke out in the H-Block prisons, events in Glasgow came to a head and took the Old Firm to its lowest ebb. The 1980 Scottish Cup final was a game that would be remembered for what happened on the pitch, but the players' role would be a minor one.
After 90 minutes, the game was passed by in a flash. It was just so bad. Nothing really. The goalkeepers were asked to make a save, and we got a corner kick. The ball came out to me. But we've maybe been a little bit tired. My time was a little bit out. I miskicked.
Long for side, still not clear. Danny McGrain. Oh, that's a goal!
It was only after Danny McGrain's last-minute winner and the final whistle that the true drama of the day unfolded.
And there goes the final whistle. And there's an invasion of Celtic supporters. They've come right across. They're spilling right onto the pitch.
From half a dozen fans running on the park, there was 20, and then there was 50, there was 100, and then there were thousands.
And indeed, Rangers supporters are coming on.
And it was absolutely frightening. You couldn't even run to the dugouts or anywhere because the fans had all come around us so quickly.
There are casualties in the left-hand goal mouth. At the end of the day, let's not kid ourselves. These supporters hate each other. And they itch to get at each other.
This was a period of time where they wouldn't think anything of people, you know, going in with 3 trays of lager or going in with a bag full of, you know, of wine or beer or whatever. It was just simply given.
And this is now like a scene out of Apocalypse Now.
And you had all of this in this really, really volatile environment.
So much for Frenchies on the ground. And here's another charge. Here's another charge. I almost feel like a war correspondent rather than the football commentator.
In the aftermath of the 1980 Cup final, government legislation brought in a ban on alcohol inside football grounds. Celtic and Rangers were both fined heavily, and the reputation of the Old Firm left in the gutter. Both clubs needed nothing short of a revolution to drag them into the modern age of football. Sectarianism was at its height, and on the pitch the two teams that had dominated Europe a decade earlier now couldn't even dominate the Scottish League. Going against their traditionally conservative image, it was Rangers that were first to try and stop the rot. They appointed their first manager from outside the Rangers family and brought in new players, predominantly from England, but the players themselves didn't fully realise the history they were dealing with.
My children were Catholics, and my wife was a Catholic at the time, and my supporters were singing songs about killing Catholics, and the opposition were singing songs about killing Protestants, and they're glorifying murderers. Now, okay, that's, as I said, that's something that never sat comfortable with me.
I just come from Italy and France, where I was playing with a team of Catholics, and thoroughly enjoyed their company. Lovely people, very warm people, and then all of a sudden I'm thrust into this this Glasgow derby, where the religious aspect of it was very much to the fore, which I hated.
I had only one child at that time, and even at school she would, like, you know, you'd go and pick her up And you can see the mums and dads sort of talking about you behind it, and, oh, that's his daughter, you know, the Protestant bee.
And it's a total culture shock. We were brought up with it, and we still never used to it. To come from England into this arena where you're talking, it's really vile stuff.
You know, I got burgled twice while I was living up there, and they found a lad, and he was a Celtic supporter.
For Souness and the English, it was join in or get out. And in his own inimitable style, Souness encouraged them to join in. Englishmen like Graham Roberts and Terry Butcher soon followed his lead. And besides a spate of red cards, they did begin to win over the fans and challenge for league championships.
Terry Butcher became a Scotsman overnight, and the supporters loved his up-and-atom style. And he, in playing terms at that time, was the main man. He was the most influential figure, an Englishman, leading the revolution.
After leading Rangers to their first title for 9 years, the Englishmen were considered full-blooded Protestants. But they were accused of becoming too involved in the rivalry the following season.
It stays up in support for Celtic. There's Morris. Phillips at full stretch, and the fullback did well. An angry exchange there between McAvenny and Woods, and here's trouble now. And this is what everyone was hoping would not arise. Drama here.
When Englishman Chris Woods was sent off with Celtic's Frank McAvenny, Graham Roberts took over as goalkeeper.
Here's Walker. That's for Peter Grant. That's the second.
Celtic went ahead. Then, in an increasingly tense atmosphere, Rangers equalised.
Still Richard Goff. Now McCoy for the great chance for Rangers.
Such was the sense of relief of the Rangers team that Roberts thought he'd conduct the crowd in a song they were singing, not realising it was about William of Orange and killing Catholics.
It's just another song. It's sort of, I never knew the background of it all. And it was getting louder and louder. And there was like 40,000, 45,000 Rangers supporters singing. You know, we were 2-0 down, and all of a sudden we became 2-2.
I don't think the guys actually realised how that is a knife in somebody's heart or somebody's back. Some people really find that so nauseating, and they paid the penalty for it.
Police in Scotland have charged 3 international footballers with conduct likely to cause a breach of the peace. The 3 are Chris Woods and Graham Roberts, both of Rangers and England, and Frank McAvenny of Celtic and Scotland.
We got a phone call on a Sunday morning. Could we go to the police station? And we asked what for, and they said it was because we was being charged with trying to start a riot.
People found it very hard to come to terms with the power and the passion that was attached to Rangers, and people were interfering into things that they shouldn't. A Procurator Fiscal getting himself involved in a football match. I'm sure he's embarrassed if he looks back now, because he had no right, he had no place, it didn't warrant it. And you know, football can manage its own business.
When Celtic snatched back the championship in Souness's second year, he made the decision to break another Rangers taboo. The English players had now been accepted, but what he considered doing threatened to alienate the whole club from their core support. Bucking a century of tradition, Souness was considering buying a Roman Catholic.
I think every Rangers manager before me had been asked the question, would you sign a Catholic? And when I was asked that question, and I think it happened within the first week of my being there, I was asked the question, would you sign a Catholic for Glasgow Rangers? I said, I certainly would. I said, how can I go home every night and have dinner with my children are Catholics? So I said, you know, you ask me a question. I come to work and I'm a bigot, and then when I go home I want to be a normal person. I said, no. I said, if there's a good one comes along, I feel it's right for this club, we'll do it. And a lot of people at the time said, oh, that's the standard, you know, standard answer for every manager who's been asked that. I said, well, no, that's a fact. If there's a good one comes along, we will do it.
We had a monkey on our back, so to speak, as a club, and both Graham and I discussed it at great length, and we felt it was very necessary if we were seen to be accepted in a wider marketplace.
When it was considered that Rangers might sign the first Catholic player in their history, it was thought that to appease the fans, they should probably not choose a Glasgow Catholic.
Johnston with a header! Mo Johnston this time!
It should also definitely not be a Catholic who played for Celtic. And it should certainly not be a Celtic Glasgow Catholic who in 1986 had butted a Rangers player and made the sign of the cross at Ibrox as he was sent off.
If you'd have said to any Rangers fan, who's the worst Catholic that you would want to sign, it would be Maurice Johnston.
But then surely it couldn't be Mo Johnston, as he had just returned from France, re-signed for Celtic, and pledged his lifelong allegiance to the club.
I've finished my career here. I don't want to play for anybody else, so I don't want any speculation about me going anywhere else. I just want to play for Celtic, and that's fine.
Celtic had paraded Maurice as a future signing. They'd made him wear a Celtic strip. He was playing in France at the time. They'd got him back. They pushed him in front of cameras, which he didn't want to do, and made him wear a Celtic strip. And he was going to be a future signing. And I asked his agent if he had actually signed. He said no. I said, would he come here? He said, I think he would.
Within days of his appearance at Celtic, Mo Johnston appeared at another press conference, this time at Rangers.
Flashed on the TV screen, Maurice Johnston signs for Rangers. And there was just silence, complete silence. They might have put up "War has broken out." There was just complete deathly silence. No one could believe it. They thought it was a hoax. People in the cafe seriously thought that this was a hoax. It was so unthinkable. But it happened. And right away, of course, you know, throughout the city you saw this graffiti going up, you know, stuff about Mojo, you traitor. And I remember there was one at Belgrove Station in Glasgow that just says, collaborators will be kneecapped, Mojo.
Ironically, the signing of Johnston was one of the few things in the history of the old firm that brought a unified response from both sets of fans. They both hated him.
Traitor. Scumbag. I mean, words don't describe it. I wouldn't call myself a violent person, but really, that is the kind of person that makes your blood boil.
I was actually sitting in a hotel in Belfast on the 11th of July. I was over there for the Orange Walk, and so it came from a bit of a shock that they signed Mo Johnston. Yeah, that was a shocker. I had just bought my season ticket, and that season ticket is still lying in there, brand new, without a leaf taken out of it today. I've kept it as a wee souvenir, and I didn't go back.
I know Graham's been applauded in many sources by saying that this was the breaking down of the sectarian divide. I don't think it was. I just think Graham saw the opportunity to put a real big one over Celtic, and I think he took the opportunity.
And it goes to Johnston. That's a corner.
It's a rough and tumble business, and I make no secret of it. We were in the business of being number one, and if we can get any advantage at all over Celtic, who are and always will be Rangers' biggest rivals, we must, you know, at the time we had to take it. Now I saw us poaching, us signing Maurice Johnston, whatever you want to call it, is dealing them an almighty blow. An almighty blow. And I think I was correct, because it took them until last year to win the championship. And I think part of their problem was that it took them so long to get over the Maurice Johnston saga.
Johnston, and he scored!
Whatever the motives for the signing of Johnston, Rangers were better off. The last wall of sectarianism had seemingly been broken down, and they were winning football games. Further to that, it coincided with the start of a run of form that would be unparalleled in Rangers' history. In 1989, they won their first of what would be a series of consecutive league championships.
I think the Graham Souness, David Murray partnership was probably the most significant individual item that's ever happened to this club. Between them, they took this club onto a different planet altogether.
Rangers stormed from title to title, and when boyhood Rangers fan Walter Smith replaced Graham Souness as manager, his mind turned to the record that had haunted Rangers supporters for 3 decades. Celtic's legendary 9 consecutive league championships. Across the city, Celtic had plummeted to an all-time low. Supporters aimed their frustrations at the board, whilst a succession of managers failed to stop Rangers' triumphant march towards the record.
so there were 6 championships down the road by the time I went back there as a manager. And lo and behold, what you pick up when you go in as a manager then is the time I went, was that they were well on the way to 7.
That's good play by Selenko. McCoy says Glasgow and races with the middle. Great play for Rangers, and Glasgow is scored!
The 7th championship came with the help of the latest Englishman to be drafted in. The club that 5 years earlier had never played a Catholic now fielded countless foreign players. As Rangers neared the magical 9th, excitement rose to fever pitch at Ibrox, but at Celtic the pressure was starting to take its toll.
And that was a year then that was just unbelievable. You can see people, you know, men that should know better, suddenly trying to put extra pressure on you. The only thing they could see was 9 in a row. They couldn't see whether the club was making progress or what we needed to do to make the next stage. Everything was just totally obsessed with that. And it got to the stage where there was nothing we could do because they were just so gaga about the whole thing.
Tommy Burns and Celtic could do nothing to stop a rampant Rangers from winning once again. Rangers had done 9 in a row, and their fans danced in the streets whilst their rivals mourned the loss of their cherished record.
The moment belongs to Rangers!
But equalling the record was never going to be enough. After a quarter of a century in the shadow of Celtic's 9 in a row, Rangers had the opportunity to overtake them and put themselves in the record books by winning an unprecedented 10 league titles in a row.
If you took a poll of opinions from all Rangers supporters and says to them at the start of the season, what would you have this year? Would you rather win the Championship or win the European Cup? You've got a great deal of them saying, no, we want 10 in a row to beat a record.
More than 100 years of fierce rivalry came to a head in one season as Rangers went all out to win the 10 and Celtic battled to stop them. The two clubs were playing not just to win the league title, but to seal their place in history.
This phrase, 10 in a row, came to dominate the whole of Scottish football throughout the season. You heard it everywhere. Everywhere you went, in pubs and clubs, in conversations, in the press, the term 10 in a row was the kind of fever pitch really of Scottish football.
Rangers started 1998 at the top of the league, but nerves became more and more evident as both teams failed to put together a convincing run in the face of mounting hysteria from both sets of supporters. As the end of the season loomed, it was Celtic who seemed to have the initiative, but Rangers clung on, and 10 in a row remained a very real possibility.
Like, supporters were coming up to you and saying, just do it this year, just stop them this one time from winning the league. And you can't get away from that fact then. That's what they want. The pressure going into the last game, the St Johnstone game, I mean, the build-up wasn't so bad, but when you actually got out there, you realised what was on this.
When Celtic ran out on the last day of the season, they knew that nothing less than a win would suffice. The stopping of the 10 in a row was in their own hands.
Picked up by Paul Lambert, now Henrik Larsson. Donnelly's alongside him. Larsson lining up for the shot! What a start for Celtic! 2 minutes gone! And Larsson makes the breakthrough! Boyd's looking for a possible pass, waiting for the McNamara run. It's a good pass. In for Harold Gladbach! He's done it!
Thanks to goals from a Swede and a Norwegian, Celtic were champions for the first time in a decade.
Any neutral will say that was what should have happened. 9 in a row. They're two great clubs. They've both done wonderful things for this city. And it was right and proper, really, that it should end, if you like, in a draw, because it closed the book.
This season sees Celtic and Rangers on a level playing field for the first time since the 60s. The teams they field are two of the most multicultural in Europe. Both clubs eagerly snap up players of different faiths or nationality in their quest to enter a European Super League. But whether the fans' attitude towards the Old Firm will change still remains to be seen.
Well, Old Firm rival will be there forever, but I do think it will diminish through a period of time as we move into a European Super League. I believe that we'll be playing midweek European football, less domestic games on a Saturday. It's what UEFA will have to do to keep the clubs happy, but you know, it'll always be there.
What they want to do is they want to extend the brand of Celtic and Rangers around the world to sell merchandise, to sell the concept of the club and all the rest of it. And they want that brand to not be stained by old-fashioned stuff like sectarianism. But curiously, at the heart of that, what is their unique selling point as a brand? In business terms, the USP of Celtic is that they are historically an Irish club, and the USP of Rangers is that they are staunchly a Scottish Protestant club.
It's going to be difficult, I think, to cut any of the bigotry out. They are trying, but I can assure you, if I live to be 250, it will be exactly the same songs that are going to be sung at an Old Firm game.
I hope it never goes away, which is a terrible thing to say. It means I hope the hatred that both supporters have never goes away. I don't mean that, so what I'm actually saying is rubbish. You know, the Old Firm game is built on passion, and that goes away. I don't know what's going to be left, just an ordinary game. And I can't see an ordinary Rangers Celtic game.
You'll never ever change it, because if you do, the football game will become just another game. And they won't allow that. The two sets of supporters won't allow that.
If it wasn't there, then what else would they have to do? They'll just love to wind one another up. And if you take away the football, they would have nothing else to do, because it's so important to so many of them. But that was always the thing we try to get across to players, that they have to remember that it's more than just a football team they're playing for. They're playing for a cause and for a people, you know.
How the golfing gloves came off between Europe and America. Ryder Cup rivalry in Clash of the Titans next Sunday at 10, BBC 2.